Violet Horizons Commander Arya Novak stood perfectly still in the gleaming arrival chamber of Earth's interplanetary embassy, her violet-tinged skin contrasting sharply with the sterile white walls. The neural dampeners at her temples pulsed with a soft blue light. Working overtime to process the sensory bombardment of her new surroundings, she'd prepared extensively for this moment, the culmination of decades of diplomatic training on Zelar Prime, yet nothing could have prepared her for the sheer emotional intensity that radiated from the humans around her. Commander Novak, a voice called from behind. She turned with practiced precision, her movements economical and controlled. The human approaching her walked with an easy confidence that seemed almost careless. His eyes were warm brown, his smile casual, indicators of emotional states she had only studied in simulations. "I'm Dr. James Chen," he said, extending his hand toward her. "Earth's diplomatic liaison for your mission here." Arya stared at his offered hand, her training screaming warnings about the dangers of physical contact with emotionally unregulated species. On Zelar, touching was reserved for medical necessity and formal ceremonial occasions. Here on Earth, they did it constantly, carelessly, Dr. Chen, she acknowledged with a slight bow, deliberately ignoring his outstretched hand. "I do not participate in casual physical contact," she spoke in perfectly modulated standard, her voice deliberately free of inflection. His hand dropped, but the smile remained. "Of course, my apologies. Commander, I should have reviewed your cultural protocols more thoroughly." Something in his voice, a subtle modulation her training couldn't quite categorize, made her neural dampeners flutter unexpectedly. "Your accommodation module has been prepared according to Zalarian environmental standards," Dr. Chen continued, gesturing toward a transport tube. "Would you prefer to rest or begin your orientation immediately?" "Immediate orientation would be optimal," she replied. "Rest cycles are inefficient during adjustment periods." Dr. Chen nodded and led her toward a large circular chamber filled with holographic displays. As they walked, she maintained precise distance, calibrating her movements to ensure no accidental contact. "Your mission is unprecedented," he said as the door sealed behind them. "The first Zalarian human hybrid to serve as a diplomatic envoy. There are many who believe this could finally end centuries of mistrust between our worlds." "I am aware of my purpose," Arya replied coolly, "though I find it illogical to base interplanetary relations on a single genetic anomaly." Dr. Chen smiled again. "Humans find personal connections more persuasive than logic. Commander, that's something you'll need to adapt to during your time here." As he activated the orientation sequence, his arm accidentally brushed against hers. The contact lasted less than a second, but it sent a shock wave through her neural system, momentarily overriding her dampeners. Her mind flashed with unfamiliar sensations, warmth, curiosity, something undefined but powerful. "I apologize for the contact," Dr. Chen said quickly. Noticing her rigid posture, Arya struggled to regain her composure, stunned by what had happened. No Zalarian had ever experienced neural transfer from simple contact with a human. It was theoretically impossible. "Is everything all right, Commander?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "Perfectly functional," she lied, her mind racing. Whatever had just happened would require careful analysis. One thing was certain. Her mission on Earth had suddenly become far more complicated than anticipated. Forbidden frequencies. The simulation chamber hummed with energy as holographic projections of Earth's bustling streets surrounded them. Dr. Chen stood beside a control panel, observing Arya's reactions as she navigated through the virtual crowd. "The purpose of these simulations is to acclimate you to Earth's emotional landscape without overwhelming your neural systems," he explained, adjusting parameters on the display. "Today we're focusing on casual interactions, greetings, conversations, simple exchanges." Arya moved through the projection with careful precision, her posture rigid. 3 weeks into her Earth assignment, and still the cacophony of human emotional expression felt like walking through an electrical storm. "Humans waste considerable energy on these social rituals," she observed, watching a holographic couple embrace in greeting. "On Zelar, we communicate necessary information and proceed to purposeful activity." Dr. Chen smiled at this. "And yet you've been sent here to understand us better. Perhaps there's value in what seems wasteful to you." A flicker of something, curiosity perhaps, crossed her features before she suppressed it. "Understanding does not require appreciation, Dr. Chen. Please," he said, deactivating the simulation with a wave of his hand. "After 3 weeks of daily sessions, you might consider calling me James." The sudden silence left them standing closer than Arya's protocols would normally permit. She took a measured step backward. "Such informality would be premature," she replied, "particularly given the anomalous neural responses I've been experiencing in your presence." His eyebrows rose with interest. "You've been experiencing anomalies? Why haven't you mentioned this during our daily reports?" "Because I cannot explain them," Arya admitted, her voice dropping slightly. "And unexplained phenomena are not viewed favorably by the Zalarian diplomatic corps." James moved closer, his scientific curiosity evident. "What kind of anomalies specifically?" "When we are in proximity, my neural dampeners register unusual patterns," she said, struggling to find appropriate terminology. "There appears to be a form of resonance between us that bypasses standard blocking protocols." "Fascinating," James whispered, reaching for a handheld scanner on the nearby console. "Would you permit me to take some readings? This could be significant." Arya hesitated, aware that she was potentially violating protocol, but her scientific training overruled diplomatic caution. "Proceed." As he activated the scanner, his fingers accidentally brushed against her wrist. The contact sent another wave of sensation through her. Stronger this time, less chaotic but more intense. Her dampeners flickered wildly, neural pathways lighting up in patterns she'd never experienced. "Your readings are extraordinary," James murmured, studying the display. "Your neural pathways are adapting to human emotional frequencies at an unprecedented rate. Your hybrid physiology seems to be creating entirely new neural architecture." "That's impossible," Arya whispered, a tremor in her voice betraying her agitation. "My dampeners should prevent any such adaptation." James looked up from the scanner, meeting her eyes directly. "Unless they were never meant to dampen at all. What if your hybrid nature isn't a diplomatic convenience, but an evolutionary bridge between our species?" Arya felt something unfamiliar rising within her, a sensation the Zalarians had trained her to recognize but never experience. Fear. "Such speculation is inappropriate, Dr. Chen," she said, her voice colder than before. "These sessions are meant to facilitate my diplomatic function, not to theorize about genetic implications." "Of course," he replied, though his expression remained thoughtful. "My apologies, Commander." As she turned to leave, Arya felt another pulse of unfamiliar emotion. This wasn't fear or confusion. This was something else entirely, something warm and persistent that lingered even after her dampeners stabilized. "Same time tomorrow?" James called after her. She paused at the doorway, not turning back. "Yes, and Dr. Chen? These anomalies remain between us for now." As the door closed behind her, Arya realized with growing concern that she was beginning to anticipate their daily sessions. And anticipation was dangerously close to desire, an emotion no Zalarian would ever admit to feeling. Resonant touched the Grand Embassy ballroom shimmered with holographic decorations, representing both Earth and Zelar Prime, stars, and nebulae swirling overhead while diplomatic delegates from 12 systems mingled. Below, Arya stood near a crystalline pillar, a strategic position that allowed her to observe without excessive interaction. "You've been avoiding the reception line for 43 minutes. James appeared beside her, offering a glass of blue liquid, non-alcoholic, synthesized to Zalarian specifications. "I have been observing," she corrected, accepting the glass without allowing their fingers to touch. "The Andromedan ambassador appears agitated when speaking with the Earth president." "A potential diplomatic concern," James smiled. "Or perhaps they're discussing the latest interstellar racing results." "Not everything is a diplomatic crisis, Commander." Before she could respond, the chamber's atmospheric controls shifted, releasing a subtle array of scent molecules designed to enhance cross-species comfort. For humans, it was barely perceptible. For Arya, with her heightened Zalarian senses, it was overwhelming. The glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. Her neural dampeners flared with warning lights as her sensory systems began to overload. The room tilted around her, Arya? James's voice seemed distant. What's happening? Too much, she managed to whisper. Sensory cascade. Without hesitation, James took her elbow and guided her through a side door into a small meditation chamber. The door sealed behind them, instantly muting the external stimuli. Neural dampener failure, she gasped, reaching for the controls at her temples with shaking fingers. Cannot stabilize. Let me help, James said, moving closer. I've studied your neural architecture extensively over these past weeks. Physical contact will only worsen the cascade, she warned. Her voice strained. James hesitated only briefly. Trust me, he said, and gently placed his hands on either side of her face, his fingertips lightly touching her dampener controls. The effect was immediate and astonishing. Instead of intensifying her overload, his touch created a counter-frequency, a stabilizing wave that swept through her neural network. The chaotic firing of her synapses gradually calmed, replaced by a harmonious rhythm that pulsed between them. How is this possible? She whispered, her violet eyes wide with wonder. You're modulating my neural frequency. Not modulating, he corrected softly, his face inches from hers. Synchronizing. We're resonating together. The realization struck her with perfect clarity. The anomalies in our sessions, we've been unconsciously synchronizing all along. James finished her thought. Your hybrid physiology isn't just combining Zellerian and human traits, it's creating something entirely new. As their neural patterns aligned, Arya felt the rigid barriers of her training begin to dissolve. Emotions she had never permitted herself to acknowledge flowed freely between them. Curiosity, fascination, and something deeper, warmer. Is this how humans feel all the time? She asked, wonder in her voice. James smiled. Only when we're with someone who matters. The implication of his words sent a new sensation through her synchronized neural pathways. Without conscious thought, she raised her hand to his, covering his fingers with her own, intensifying their connection. The Zellerian diplomatic corps believes emotional attachment creates dangerous vulnerabilities, she said quietly. And what do you believe, Arya? James asked, using her first name for the first time. She looked into his eyes. Experiencing the full complexity of human emotion without filters or dampeners, I believe I have much to learn about vulnerability. A soft chime interrupted them, her communicator signaling a diplomatic alert. Reality crashed back. She was still a commander, still an envoy with responsibilities. We should return to the reception, she said, reluctantly breaking their neural connection. As they prepared to rejoin the gathering, James gently touched her wrist. What happened between us, it changes everything we thought we knew about human-Zellerian relations. Yes, she agreed, feeling strangely unafraid of this new territory. And perhaps that was the purpose all along. Neural storm. The monitoring lab hummed with quiet energy as James adjusted the neural scanners hovering above Arya's reclining form. They had been conducting these clandestine sessions for 2 weeks now, documenting the unprecedented neural synchronicity between them. Your theta waves are showing remarkable adaptation patterns, James said, studying the holographic display. They're restructuring to create pathways that shouldn't be possible between our species. Arya watched him work, still adjusting to the sensation of operating with her dampeners set to minimal interference. Every movement, every expression of his now carried layers of meaning she had previously filtered out. The diplomatic corps has noticed changes in my behavioral patterns, she admitted. Ambassador Thorne has requested a formal evaluation upon my return to Zelar Prime. James's hand stilled over the controls. They're calling you back? Not yet, she replied. But they're concerned about what they call emotional contamination from prolonged Earth exposure. He turned to face her, his expression troubled. You knew this might happen when we began these experiments. I calculated the diplomatic risk against scientific discovery, Arya said, sitting up from the scanning platform. What we're learning about cross-species neural compatibility outweighs potential career consequences. Does it? James asked quietly. Or are we justifying something much more personal with scientific rationale? Before she could respond, the lab door slid open. Deputy Ambassador Sarah Kwan stood in the doorway, her expression shifting from surprise to calculated neutrality. "Commander Novak," she said formally, "the Zolarian envoy has been attempting to contact you. Your communication implant appears to be malfunctioning." "Thank you, Deputy Kwan," Arya replied, her training automatically reasserting itself. "Dr. Chen has been conducting standard adaptation assessments." Sarah's eyes moved between them, noting their proximity, the minimized dampener settings, the unauthorized neural scanning equipment. "I see," she said finally. "The envoy awaits you in the diplomatic chambers." After Sarah departed, James exhaled slowly. "That complicates things. She will report what she observed." Arya confirmed. "The question is to whom?" James ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "I should have been more careful. These experiments aren't sanctioned by either of our governments." "They aren't just experiments anymore, James," Arya said softly. The admission hung between them, charged with implications neither had fully voiced. James moved closer, his neural patterns instinctively seeking synchronization with hers. "I've developed a theory about what's happening between us," he said. "Your hybrid physiology isn't just an accident of genetics. I believe the human-Zolarian physiological combination was always meant to create a neural bridge between our species. That contradicts everything in Zolarian evolutionary science," Arya countered. "Because Zolarian science has deliberately ignored the possibility," James argued. "Your people have spent centuries engineering emotional suppression into your culture. What if that was a mistake? What if emotional connection is the evolutionary advantage you've been suppressing?" Before Arya could respond, pain lanced through her neural pathways. Her dampeners flared bright red as she collapsed forward. James caught her, lowering her gently to the floor. "What's happening?" he asked urgently, reaching for a medical scanner. "Remote dampener override," she gasped through the pain. "Standard protocol when a Zolarian is suspected of emotional compromise." James worked frantically, attempting to counteract the override signal. "They're trying to sever our neural connection by force." "They can't," she whispered, her violet eyes finding his. "It's too late for that." As the pain intensified, something unprecedented occurred. Instead of severing their connection, the override triggered a neural storm that swept through both of them, linking their minds more profoundly than ever before. For a blinding moment, James experienced the full spectrum of Zolarian consciousness, the precision, the clarity, the hidden depths of feeling beneath centuries of suppression. When the storm subsided, they remained on the lab floor, foreheads touching, breathing in unison. "They'll come for you now," James said quietly. "That level of force dampening is only authorized when a diplomat is being recalled." Arya's fingers intertwined with his, a gesture that would have been unthinkable weeks before. "Then we have very little time to complete our research," she said with newfound determination. "And to decide what comes after." Quantum heartbeats, the orbital transfer station hung suspended between Earth and the approaching Zolarian diplomatic vessel, a neutral space where decisions of interplanetary significance were made daily. Arya stood before the viewport, watching the approaching lights of the ship that would take her home, if she chose to board it. "They're early," James observed, joining her at the viewport. "Ambassador Thorne must be eager to get you back under full Zolarian control." 3 days had passed since the neural storm. Days spent in feverish research and equally intense personal discovery. Their neural connection had stabilized into something permanent, a quantum entanglement between minds that persisted even when they were physically separated. "I've uploaded our complete research findings to both Earth, Science Directorate, and the Interspecies Medical Commission," Arya said. "Anonymous source attribution, of course." James smiled slightly. Always the thorough diplomat, even in rebellion. Not rebellion, she corrected, evolution. The station's communication system chimed softly. Commander Novak announced the automated voice. "The Zolarian delegation awaits you in Docking Bay 3. Neither moved. "They'll fit you with enhanced dampeners," James said quietly. "Designed specifically to sever our connection. The prototype is already being manufactured on Zelar Prime." "I know," Arya replied, turning to face him. In the soft light of the station, her violet skin seemed to glow from within. I accessed their secure communications. Can they actually do it? Break our connection? She stepped closer to him, close enough that their neural patterns automatically synchronized into perfect harmony. They believe they can. She placed her hand against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. They're wrong. The station's communication system chimed again, more insistent. Final boarding call for Commander Arya Novak's Zalarian vessel departing in 15 minutes. You've made your decision, James realized, covering her hand with his own. I made it during the neural storm, she admitted. When our minds truly joined, I saw what the Zalarians have been hiding for generations. Our emotional suppression wasn't to prevent weakness. It was to prevent this exact moment, the discovery that we are stronger together than apart. James drew her closer. Your people won't accept this easily. They won't have a choice. Arya smiled. Because we're not the only ones. All across the diplomatic corps, human-Zalarian interactions have been creating smaller versions of what we experienced. Subtle connections. Unexplained empathic moments. We were simply the first to recognize it for what it is. And what is it exactly? James asked, though his synchronized neural patterns told him he already knew the answer. The next phase of evolution for both our species, she replied. What humans call love and Zalarians call forbidden. The quantum entanglement of consciousness. On the communications screen, Ambassador Thorne's face appeared, his expression coldly furious. Commander Novak, he said sharply, your absence has been noted. This constitutes a direct violation of diplomatic protocol. Arya turned to the screen, still maintaining her physical connection with James. Ambassador Thorne, she acknowledged calmly. I am formally requesting asylum on Earth, under Section 27 of the Interspecies Diplomatic Accord. On what grounds? Thorne demanded. Scientific necessity, she replied. Dr. Chen and I have discovered a neural compatibility between our species that contradicts centuries of Zalarian teaching. I believe I would be in danger if returned to Zelar Prime. This is absurd, Thorne sputtered. Your human emotional contamination is actually an evolutionary advantage, James interrupted. One your government has been suppressing. Our research proves it. Arya felt James's certainty flowing through their connection, strengthening her resolve. The research has already been distributed to scientific authorities throughout the Allied systems, she informed Thorne. Attempting to suppress it now would constitute a violation of the scientific truth protocols. The ambassador's face hardened. You have betrayed your people. Commander, no, she countered. I've discovered what we truly are. What we can become. After Thorne's image disappeared from the screen, James turned to her. That was impressive, but you know this isn't over. Both our governments will have questions. Objections. Of course, she agreed. Paradigm shifts are never simple, particularly between worlds. As the Zalarian ship disengaged from the station, departing without their intended passenger, Arya and James remained by the viewport, their neural patterns dancing in perfect synchronization. Two worlds, two consciousness streams merged into something entirely new. What happens now? James asked, their foreheads touching, the connection between them humming with possibilities. Now we build the bridge, Arya whispered. Between worlds, between minds, between hearts. She smiled, a full, unreserved human expression that would have been impossible weeks ago. After all, isn't that why I came to Earth in the first place? James returned her smile, their quantum-entangled minds sharing the same thought. That some connections once formed transcend all barriers, even those between the stars. To think, he murmured, drawing her closer. It all started with a touch. No, Arya corrected softly. It started with the possibility of what that touch could become. As Earth rotated below them and distant stars beckoned above, they stood together at the threshold of a new understanding between worlds, their neural patterns beating in unison like quantum heartbeats across the cosmos.